When they went up to the others, the stale tunnel drafts had had time to blow through their minds, so that they were less convinced of Khan's proposition. The strong man with the beard stepped forward. Listen, brother. He carelessly turned to Artyom's companion. Without even looking at him, Artyom could feel the air around Khan electrify. It seems that such familiarity had incensed Khan. Of all the people Artyom knew, it was Khan that he would least like to see furious. There was also the hunter, but he seemed to Artyom to be so much more cold-blooded that it was impossible to imagine him in a rage. He would probably kill people with the same expression on his face that other people would have when they were washing mushrooms or making tea. We've been discussing it, and we think the thickest man continued that you're chasing snowstorms here. For me, for example, it's completely inconvenient to go to Kitai Garad, and those guys are against it too. Right, Simonich? He turned for the support of the crowd. Someone in the crowd nodded in agreement, though rather timidly. Though rather timidly. Most of us were going to Prospect Mur to the Hansa until the business in the tunnel started up. So we're waiting here and then moving on. Nothing is left here anyway. We burned his things, and don't try to get us to think about the air. This isn't pulmonary plague, and if we're infected, then we're already infected, and there's nothing to be done. It's not likely that there wasn't any infection here to start with, so you can get lost, brother, with your propositions. The bearded man's manner was becoming even more familiar. Artyom was a little taken aback by this onslaught, but stealing a look at his companion, he felt that the guy was in trouble. There was that blazing orange internal flame in Khan's eyes, and there was such savage malice and power coming from him that Artyom felt a chill, and the hair on his head began to rise, and he wanted to bare his teeth and roar. Why did you kill him if there was no infection after all? Khan asked, insinuatingly, with a deliberate, soft voice. It was prophylactic, the thickest man answered with an insolent look. No, my friend, this isn't medicine. This was a crime. What gave you the right to do it? Don't call me friend. I'm not your dog, okay? The bearded man growled. What right did I have? The right of the strong. Haven't you heard of it? And you're not exactly. What could get you and your foundling to We could get you and your foundling too. As a prophylactic measure. Got it. With a gesture already familiar to Artyom, the man pulled open his waistcoat and put his hand on his holster. This time Khan didn't manage to hold Artyom back, and the bearded man was in the crosshairs of Artyom's machine gun before he could even unbutton his holster. Artyom was breathing heavily and couldn't hear his heart beating. No, heavily and could hear his heart beating and the blood pounding in his temples, and there wasn't a reasonable thought in his head. He knew only one thing. If the bearded man said one more thing, or if his hand continued on its way to his pistol handle, then he would immediately pull the trigger. Artyom didn't want to die like the poor guy had. He wouldn't let the pack tear him to pieces. The bearded guy froze in place and didn't make a move, with evil flashing in his dark eyes. And then something incomprehensible happened. Khan suddenly took a big step forward, looked the man in the eyes and said, "Stop it. You will obey me, or you will die." The threatening gaze of the bearded man faded, and his hands were powerless, hanging down beside his body. It looked as unnatural that Artyom had no doubt that it was Khan's words and not the machine gun that had an effect on the man. "Never discuss the rights of the strong. You are too weak to do that," said Khan, and he returned to Artyom without even disarming the man. The thickest man stood still, looking from side to side. People were waiting to hear what Khan was going to say next. His control over the situation had been restored. "We will consider the matter closed, and that consensus has been reached. We leave in 15 minutes." And turning to Artyom, he said, "People, you say?" "No, my friend. They are beasts. They are a pack of jackals. They were preparing to tear us apart, and they would have, but they forgot one thing. They are jackals, but I am a wolf, and there are some stations where I am known only by that name." Artyom was silent, dumbstruck by what he had seen, finally understanding who Khan reminded him of. "But you are a wolf cub," Khan added after a minute, not turning around, but Artyom heard the unexpected warm notes in his voice. The Comet of Darkness. The tunnel was absolutely empty and clean. The ground was dry. There was a pleasant breeze blowing into their faces. There wasn't even one rat, and there were no suspicious-looking side passages and gaping patches of blackness to the sides. Only a few locked doors, and it seemed that one could live in this tunnel just as well as at any of the stations. But more than that, this total unnatural calm and cleanliness not only meant They weren't on their ground, but it instantly dissipated any fear of death and disappearance. Here the legends about disappeared people started to seem like silly fabrications, and Artyom already started to wonder if the wild scene with the unfortunate man who they thought had the plague had actually happened. Maybe it was just a little nightmare that had visited him while he snoozed on the turpulin by the wandering philosopher's fire. He and Cain were bringing up the rear since Khan was concerned that the men might break away from the group one by one, and then, according to him, no one would reach Katai Gurad, Gurad. Now he was quietly walking next to Artyom, calmly, as though nothing had happened, and the deep wrinkles which had cut through his face during the skirmish at Sakharovskaya were now smooth. The storm had passed, and walking next to Artyom there was now a wise and restrained Khan and not a furious full-grown wolf. But Artyom was sure the transformation would take only a minute. Understanding that the next opportunity to draw aside the curtain from the metro's mysteries had arisen, he couldn't hold himself back. Do you understand what happened in this tunnel? No, no one knows that, including me, Khan answered reluctantly. Yes, there are some things that even I know exactly nothing about. The only thing I can tell you is that it's an abyss. I call this place the Black Hole. You probably have never seen a star, or did you say you once saw one? And do you know anything about the cosmos? Well, a dying star can look like a hole if, when it goes out, it is affected by its own incredible, powerful energy, and it starts to consume itself, taking matter from the outside to the inside, to its center, which is becoming smaller all the time, but more dense and heavier. And the denser it becomes, the more its force of gravity grows. This process is irreversible, and it's like an avalanche. With the ever-increasing gravity, the growing quantity of matter is drawn faster and faster to the heart of the monster. At a certain stage, its power achieves such magnitude that it sucks in its neighbors and all the matter that is located within the bounds of its influence, and finally, even light waves. The gigantic force allows it to devour the ray of other suns, and the space around it is dead and black. Nothing that falls into its possession has the strength to pull itself away. This is a star of darkness, a black sun, and around it is only cold and darkness. We went quiet listening to the conversation of the people ahead of them. He went quiet, listening to the conversation of the people ahead of them. But what does that have to do with the tunnel? Artyom couldn't resist asking after a few minutes of silence. You know, I have the gift of foresight. I sometimes succeed in seeing into the future, into the past, or sometimes I can transport my mind to other places. Sometimes it's clear, it's hidden. Sometimes it's unclear, it's hidden from me. Like, for example, I don't know how your journey will end. Your future is generally a mystery to me. It's kind of like looking through dirty water and you can't make out anything. But when I try to look into what happened here or to understand the nature of this place, there's only blackness in front of me, and the rays of my thoughts don't return from the absolute darkness of this tunnel. That's why I call it the black hole. That's all I can tell you about it. And he went silent, but after a few moments he added, and that's why I'm here. So you don't know why sometimes this tunnel is completely safe and other times it swallows people, and why it only takes people traveling alone. I know nothing more about it that you do, even though I've been trying for 3 years to figure out this mystery so far in vain. Their steps resounded with a distant echo. The air here was transparent, and breathing was surprisingly easy, and the darkness didn't seem frightening. Khan's words didn't put him on his guard or worry him. Artyom thought that his companion was so gloomy not because of the secrets and hazards of the tunnel, but because of the futility of his investigations. His preoccupation with self-conscious and even ridiculous in Artyom's opinion. His preoccupations was self-conscious and even ridiculous in Artyom's opinion. Here was the passage, and there was no threats here. It was straight and empty. A boisterous melody even started to play in his head, and apparently it then became external without his noticing. But Khan suddenly looked at him mockingly and asked, "So then, isn't this fun? It's nice here, right? So quiet, so clean, yes?" "Aha," Artyom agreed joyfully. And he felt so light and free in his soul because Khan had understood his mood and was also affected by it. He is also walking and smiling and not burdened with heavy thoughts. He also believes that this tunnel is. So now, cover your ears and I'll take you by the hand so you won't stumble. Do you see anything?" Khan asked with interest, softly squeezing Artyom's wrist. "No, I don't see anything. Only a little light from the flashlight through my eyelids," Artyom said a little disappointingly, squeezing his eyes close obediently, and suddenly he quietly yelped. "There, you made it. Khan noticed with satisfaction. It's beautiful, yes. Amazing. It's like when there's no ceiling and everything is so blue. My God, what beauty and how easy to breathe. That, my friend, is the sky. It's curious, no? If you relax and close your eyes in the right mood here, then lots of people see it. It's strange, of course. Even those who have never been to the surface see it, and the feeling as though you've landed at the surface before it all happened. And do you see it? Artyom asked blissfully, not wanting to open his eyes. No, Khan said darkly. Almost everyone sees it, but I don't. I only see thick brick darkness around the tunnel, if you know what I mean. Blackness above, below, and on all sides, and only a small thread of light extends into the tunnel, and we follow it when we're in the labyrinth. Maybe I'm blind, or maybe everyone else is blind. Okay, open your eyes. I'm not a guide dog, and I don't intend to take you by the hand to Kitai Garad. Here, no. He let go of Artyom's wrist. Artyom tried to walk with his eyes squeezed shut, but he stumbled on a cross tie and almost fell to the ground along with his whole load. After that, he reluctantly lifted his eyelids and stayed silent for a long while afterwards, smiling stupidly. What was it? He asked finally. Fantasies, dreams, a mood, everything together, Khan replied. But it's very changeable. It's not your mood it's not your mood or your dreams. There are a lot of us here, and so far nothing has happened. But the mood can change totally, and you will feel it. Like there, we are already coming out at Turgenevskaya. We got here fast, but we can't stop here at any cost. Not even for a break. People will probably ask to take a break, but not everyone feels the tunnel. The majority of them don't even feel what is accessible to you. We need to go on, even though now it will be harder. They stepped into the station. The light marble that coated the walls was barely distinguishable from that which covered the walls at Prospect Mir and Sakharovskaya. But there, the walls and ceilings were so smoke-stained and greasy that the stone was almost invisible. Here it was untainted, and it was hard not to admire it. People had left this place so long ago that there was no trace of their presence. The station was in surprisingly good condition, as though it had never been flooded, never seen a fire, and if it weren't for the pitch darkness of the layer of dust on the floor, benches, and walls, you could have thought that in a minute a stream of passengers would start flowing into it, or after emitting its melodious signal, a train would arrive.